would like to know when you're in that moment failing and you have to keep going, what do you say to yourself?
What if? A lot of times I'll be in a 200-mile run or something like that, and I'm all jacked up. Body's broken, mind's broken, spirit's broken. I started to say, what if I can pull this off? When I first walked into the Navy SEAL recruiter's office, he looked at me and said, there's only been 35 African Americans in 70 years make it through. You know what I said to myself? What if I can be the 36th? It's the what if I can pull off a fucking miracle. What if I can become someone that no one thinks I can be? And just me talking about that, I have the hair going up on my arms because it makes me just like, what if I can be that guy that people who call nigger and this and that, and now I'm speaking at Tom Ferry's fucking event. What if? That's it.
Yes, sir.
All right, welcome to the Eric J. the Great podcast show. We got a very special guest on the show today, music exec Orlando McGhee. How you doing?
Great. How about yourself, Eric?
So for everybody out there, tell the people where you're from.
Man, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, but I was born in Warrenton, Georgia, which is kind of down in the country. But man, I moved to Jersey when I was maybe 2, and I lived in Jersey till I was 12. Vineland, New Jersey. Grew up on a horse farm there. And then moved back to Atlanta at 12, and the rest is history. Southwest Atlanta, SWATs, Carver Home, housing projects.
So you got like 2 hometowns, kind of split childhood.
Yes, sir. Man, it was interesting kind of coming back with the northern accent down south. I probably can't hear it now, but yeah, it was pretty heavy back then. I'll tell my age now because I was into breakdancing real tough back then too. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So for anybody that never been to New Jersey or Atlanta, just describe how it was. I know there's 2 different points of childhood. You was a toddler / preteen in one area, and then you was a teenager in another area. So just describe how it was just growing up as a kid in general, just obstacles you had to overcome.
Gotcha. Well, it's interesting. In Jersey, I was on the outskirts of the city, so it was a little more rural, a little more country. So, a lot of flat lands, a lot of farmland, a lot of plants. My mother worked at a chicken plant, and then eventually ended up working at a glass manufacturer. But outside of that, man, it was a lot of horse farms. So in Vineland, where I'm from, they call it the Tri-County areas, Vineland, Millville, and Bridgeton. So I grew up there, kind of just hanging out. I learned how to play baseball with a lot of the Puerto Ricans that had migrated into Jersey. It was big. We won a little league, championship there. I also played street hockey, which is something we don't do in the South at all, but it was a huge thing in Jersey. They actually at the park, they actually had a street hockey rink. An actual stadium set up. There were adult leagues, there were kid leagues, youth leagues. So, it was a big deal. So when I came to Atlanta, everything kind of changed in the sense that I was, and I guess in the area we were in, I mean, for the most part, we were one of the only black families. There were several black families, but, it wasn't as many as you would find, in Atlanta. So it was more of a culture shock. I went from being, maybe 10%, 15% of African Americans. There was a large Hispanic population also. I said they were maybe 20% at the time. And then coming to Atlanta, Southwest Atlanta was all predominantly black. I mean, it was all black. It was no question as far as, the culture, who we were, what we were, and so on and so forth. And it was kind of interesting to see the excellence of it, the wealth of it. I grew up very, kind of Not necessarily poor. My mom did well for us. She actually, I remember, she and I were talking about it recently. I remember in Jersey, her going to class and my brother and I sitting outside when she was in community college. My brother and I sitting outside her classes while she would, go to school to study to get her, certificate and degrees. So she's an accountant now. She's retired now, but she ended up, retiring from Ralph Lauren as an accountant. But I remember kind of going through that process and, fathers weren't present and, none of my brothers and I knew our father. So no, it was what it was. But, kind of going from that aspect of, kind of country town in Jersey and coming to the big city of Atlanta, man, it was big deal, Deion Sanders and,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Otis Nixon and, those were good times in Atlanta, man.
Oh, yeah. So, I know you touched on the street hockey and things like. Did you play any organized sports when you was a kid?
Yeah, so baseball was my thing. I thought I was gonna go play Major League Baseball, man. From the time, in the neighborhoods in Jersey, it was all about the apartments you lived in. So our apartment complex would go play other apartment complexes and, early on in baseball and football. And then the rec team coaches would kind of come into the aspect of it. So, you know, I played organized football, didn't, and then I played organized baseball from 9 to when I left at 12. That it broke my heart because I just knew in Jersey I was going to be one of them guys. I played on one of the top teams. We had won the league championship 2 years in a row, but you could see the development also. So their little league was for like 9 and 10, and then 10 to 12. So when I was 9, I was sucked. I was terrible. I remember ball getting hit to me in right field and, me missing it. And my mom just yelling and screaming, not at me, but just, it's going to be all right. I was so embarrassed. But, by the time I was 12, I was that guy on my team. So, we had gone to like regional championships and little league championships, and we had done our thing. So kind of going from there to Georgia, I didn't know what to expect. So by the time I got to Georgia, we didn't get involved in a lot of um, organized stuff right away. When I got to Atlanta, the Boys and Girls Club kind of raised me. So, man, I latched on to, the year we came, a new sports director had come into the club. His name is Earl Bynum. It's crazy because I think there may be 300 of us. We claim him as our father. All of us that came into the Boys and Girls Club, man, he had just come in. He had just graduated from college. He played college basketball at Tusculum. He'd come from an environment like us. So, we identified with him, but he was young. So it was interesting to see, he was from Alabama. So, I don't know if you're familiar with Jonesboro North. Actually, if you're familiar with Young Thug, that's where he's from. He's from Jonesboro South Housing Project. I'm from Carver Homes. A lot of us kind of co-mingle together. So at this Boys and Girls Club, there were kids from Jonesboro North, Jonesboro South, neighborhood called Leela Valley, which is Rocco's from, Carver Homes, myself, Sammy Sam. It's a bunch of us from Carver. Carver Homes was huge. There were 2 elementary schools and 2 high schools in the housing project. That's how big it was. So all of us kind of migrated to this Boys and Girls Club. So, man, those were some of the best times ever. Earl, we had an intramural we didn't even have to go play other Boys and Girls Club. It was so popping and so big. We had an intramural league inside of the club. And man, we used to play, you know, I give Earl credit because he made it prideful for us. He would actually keep the stats and have our shot percentages. This is at 12, 13 years old. So, these are things that people never paid attention to. There was no internet. He actually did it by hand. So he would have statisticians keep the number of shots you would take in basketball. Same thing in batting average in baseball. So those things were really a big deal. And we took pride in, batting 300 or, having a, 60% shooting percentage. 3-point line had just kind of come into effect. So, guys were chucking it up. And, he would make sure at the end of the year you would have trophies, MVPs, all of that. We had an awards banquet at the end of the year. man, we had bodybuilding contests because he was one of those really big dudes. He would have a weight room, kind of lifting weights, and I never forget, man, I was maybe 90 pounds soaking wet, had me up there with oiled up, kind of flexing. So it was interesting in a sense. It was a great childhood. You know, we were poor, but it was, man, it was just a great time if you really think about it.
Yeah, that's why I be saying now. I be like, I feel like my era was the last era to have a real childhood. Like I'm a '90s baby, so like I was born in '93, and I feel like kids now, every kid after then, it just ain't the same, because you ain't having the rec centers in the neighborhoods no more. Everybody segregated, being on this technology and stuff. And it was before social media. It was the last childhood before social media. So like a lot of every kid now done grew up with social media. So it ain't the same.
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. We had to talk to each other.
Yeah, you had to actually meet people. Yeah. So, where did music come about? Did you touch music any time when you was a kid, or did that come when you came adult?
Yeah, probably kind of coming into my office today. One of my guys, Ray Murray from Organized Noise, he had just bought some guitars, so we were talking about him playing in the whole nine, and I was talking to him about me playing. You know, they just know me for the business side of it, but I was like, man, since I was in the fourth grade, I've played instruments, I know how to read this, that, and the other. So yeah, fourth grade, man, I started playing the bells of all things. But it was interesting because I fell in love with the sounds, the notes and whatnot. So I figured out what those notes were when I moved over to percussions, and learned how to play, the drums. So by my freshman year of high school, I realized I was too small to play, ball anymore. Um, and I saw this guy named Omar. He was a section leader at Carver High School. And, I'm looking at the football field, I'm looking at that drum line, and I decided to walk over to that drum line, and he taught me how to play, and the rest is history. I fell in love with it from that aspect of it. Um, and he ended up, he's one of the musicians on so many legendary albums, from Outkast to Goody Mob to TLC, so on and so forth. But, from that, I kind of took that love for music into a career. I wasn't the greatest musician. Um, so, you know, I didn't really realize that there was a career in it. I never forget back in the day, my Aunt Betty, her husband, was a DJ. So, and I used to always see these vinyl records, and one of his friends that would come over that worked for, Polygram Records would, bring him records to play. And I didn't realize that that was actually a career that the guy bringing him the records actually had. So, later on in life, I figured that aspect of it out though.
Yeah. So, when you take me back to the time, did you ever try to be an artist at all?
Man, that lasted about 2 hours. Back in the era when you actually had to go to a real studio.
Oh
So
yeah.
partners, my man Marcellus Lewis, myself, and there was one other guy. We pulled our money together and went into the studio. My rap name was MCG, and my last name was McGhee, so I just took that MCGEE. And you know how I paid my money, and I heard myself on tape like a couple hours later, realized, yeah, this is not for me. Waste of money. But I was so intrigued by music as a whole. That's when I started finding out about the music industry. I think LaFace had moved to Atlanta. Pebbles had come out. So you saw things kind of happening in Atlanta, and there were actual jobs. So I was like, okay, cool. How do I get in the mix? And I heard about internships, so started applying for internships. I didn't get one at LaFace, but then I realized some guys that I knew about when I was in high school. 'Cause I didn't know, Rico Ray or Sleepy when I was in high school. I didn't know Big or Dre or any of those guys from the Dungeon family. But I knew about them, so I found out where their office was, and I went and applied for an internship at Organized Noise, and the rest is history.
Okay. So how old were you at that time when you applied for the internship?
Man, 20, I was like 20 years old, 21.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you started real, real, or you're young.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I could have started earlier.
So as far as like, so you going through this transition as a teenager kid, you know, that's the age where you try to figure out what you want to do with your life. Like when you got that internship with organized noise, like how was your family supporting you, getting
Yeah.
into that lane, the money ain't that fast. So they looking like, nah, I know especially in your area, they like, nah, you need to get a career, you need to get a job, or something like that. How would you able to convince them that you'll be straight in taking that route?
So it's interesting. I was in the I was a manager at Blockbuster Video on Stewart in Cleveland here in Atlanta, legendary neighborhood. And I ended up working I left there and went to Macy's. So my shifts would fluctuate. I was a manager at Macy's at Lenox Square Mall. So I would leave I would go in first shift there, and I would leave and go to the office at Organized Noise. So I was able to kind of sustain my career because I was on the path to go into a training program to go become a district manager for
Okay.
Macy's. So, that was my career. I thought that was going to be what I was going to do for a living at the end of the day. But I had this dream and, ambition there. And in Atlanta, that kind of coincided a lot. A lot of the Linux was kind of one of those it spots. So, I would see a lot of people around. They would see me hanging around. Then I would, I was moonlighting at Organized Noise. And then in the evenings, I would pass out flyers for the artists at the clubs in the parking lot. And then I graduated from there since I was already there. They gave me records, vinyl and CDs, because the CDs were kind of popping in for the DJs. So I kind of parlayed that into having conversations with the bouncers at the door or the promoter that night that I'm bringing new music to their DJ, and I would get into the club. And that's how I got into the DJ booth, was bringing them new music, built relationships with them. And then I ended up, my first foray was kind of, as Outkast was kind of moving, I ended up being able to go on the road to kind of carry and set up the merch. So, each aspect of it, I would say I outworked everybody. Wasn't too prideful to, do the dirty work, whatever it took. I was the go to the store guy at the office. Like anytime anybody needed something, hey, I go to the store. You want some drinks, you want some soda, you want some blunt, whatever. I was a guy who knew how to make sure everybody was taken care of. So that's how I separated myself from all the other interns around. And then one day I got the call because the guys didn't often come to the office. There was a staff in the office, but then at the dungeon at Rico's house was the recording studio.
Mm.
I got the task of going to the house to deliver something. And in that moment, my eyes kind of blew up and I was like, this is where I need to be. So, man, it went from I was working at Macy's that morning to the evening to the afternoon, went to the office till they closed at 6. And when I got to the dungeon that day, I just kind of sat there and didn't leave. They didn't ask me to leave. And then, got another request to come back the next day. And I just stayed there from that point on. So that was that was my thing. I went to the office. I went to Macy's, to the office, to the dungeon. That evening, I would pass out flyers on the weekends if needed be, or, the vinyl or the records. Then this is before, the internet and cell phones. So I had my little tablet and notebook of all the clubs, all the DJs at the clubs, what night they were DJing at the clubs, built that rapport. I was bringing that back to the office and to the studio. And guys were like, man, you're on to something. So I created an environment for myself to kind of flourish in that. And then when we went on the road, same thing, I was setting up merch, but, I make it a point. I would tag along when they go do, do visits at the radio stations and kind of introduce myself to the DJs there. So I built the whole list of DJs just, from being out and about on the road. And I'll never forget, Organized Noise, they had a label deal with Interscope, and they were shooting a music video for Little Will's song called Looking for Nikki in California. And man, I booked it was the craziest thing in the world. I booked the ticket to go to LA for the video shoot. I paid for it myself out of my own pocket. I didn't have anywhere to stay though. So what I was gonna do, I was gonna, I went to the set. I was gonna stay there, video help out all day, whatever needed to be done, and then I was gonna go back to the airport and stay at the airport till my flight, later on the next day. Not realizing that some airports do close and they put you out. Um, but Rico figured that out, and he actually got me a hotel room that night, and we kind of sat and talked that night, and asked me what I wanted to do, gave him that rundown, and you know, put his arm around me, and we've been rocking ever since. God rest his soul.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. When I love hearing stories back from and y'all eras, like as far as like how you guys came in the game and stuff, because it'd be like, a lot of the stuff be like, it'd be almost like 50-50 hanging on the fence, like you making relationships, you don't know how stuff gonna turn out, you just shooting for the stars.
Yeah, buddy. Yes, sir. And you got to think about it. From that, I manage organized noise now. So kind of going from their intern to representing them over, what, a 20-year period. I've had a lot of, information that I've, taken into myself over the years to figure out how to, maneuver. So, during the time when nobody would pick up their phone calls, to get for work, I was able to kind of make some calls to kind of help make sure there was something kind of still coming in until the resurgence of them. And, now we pick and choose who we want to work with or what we want to work on, and, clearing samples, getting their catalog together, all that good stuff. So, all that came from the information they were allowing me to soak in when they were, the biggest producers in the world at the time.
Absolutely. So, as you getting your foot in the game, like, where did, when did it come about where you became executive and start, putting the plays together and being, the guy that, makes sure everything goes right with an artist?
Yes. Well, it started with organized noise, and then Lil Jon. So it's crazy because I've been a part of some really, really great teams and started out early with a lot of guys also. So as I was doing the work with organized noise, a great friend of mine, actually one of my closest friends, Yolanda Carter. She's an entertainment attorney. This is before she even had become an entertainment attorney. She decided that that's what she wanted to do. So I kind of was right there with her every step of the way. When she finally graduated, um, she was working out of an office with Vince Phillips, who was Little John's business partner in BME. So I would be around the office all the time, kind of hanging out with her. And, I was doing what I was doing with organized, but again, I was an intern. I wasn't getting paid. So Vince was like, yo, I got a couple of dollars for you if you could kind of help us, move some stuff that we actually had going. So when the Lil Jon and the Eastside Boys were really about to explode, but it hadn't happened fully yet. They had to deal with TVT, and they were really, it was underground, but it was, about to explode. And man, he brought John around. John and I hit it off, kind of talking. The rest of the staff, Rob Mack and Scat and Emperor Cersei, we all kind of had a like mindset. So they were the partners in it. And this is when I had done an independent album for a group called Attic Crew. So I financed it, put it all together, and we did a deal with Southern Music Distribution. This is back when CDs were really, really prevalent, and you could actually go to an independent distributor to put your records in the stores. We didn't really know, there was no internet, so you had to have some kind of way to, get into the stores. Um, and Attic Crew was performing one night, and there was Vince with me because Vince was representing the Attic Crew as a collective at the time. We were shopping deals around, and there's a group called, well, actually, it wasn't even, yeah, it was Little Scrappy in Trailville. They actually opened up for the Attic Crew. So Vince and I was standing there like, you know, it's like 600 kids in this nightclub. And when when they came on the stage to perform, it just exploded. And we looked at each other like, yo, what the fuck is that? Like, what's going on? And I give Vince credit. The next day, they were at the office with their parents. And, the rest is history. Vince was signing them up to be me. I just, I was in the mix doing something else, but I was kind of helping out on just the promo side of what they had going on. And they went out and did a deal with one of our partners, Naeem Ali, who was at, Warner Records at the time. Warner Brothers Records is what it was called. And John had his deal at TVT, and I think there was another artist that he had, female singer that was signed as well. But he did the label deal at Warner Brothers, and they brought me. They got an overhead budget, and they brought me in to do marketing and promotions. That was my first real job being paid in the music industry. Is that so? You know, in the boutique label system, in that era, boutique labels were big. You had Suave House, you had BME. In Atlanta alone, man, you had maybe 10 labels. You had So Def, you had BME, you had Grand Hustle, you had Noontime. I mean, it was just so many prevalent labels kind of moving, around Atlanta. Um, and we put together the Scrappy Trivial stuff, and I played a big part in just the rollout of the marketing and promo of it, but at the same time there wasn't necessarily an A&R. John was doing most of the production himself, but they needed somebody to kind of handle a lot of the admin stuff in the background of it. So I was able to figure out how to do it with Naeem's help, Naeem Ali. He kind of just gave me a blueprint of what I should do to kind of get all the stuff together for the albums. And then eventually, he kind of took note to Tom Wiley, who was the chairman of Warner Brothers, of the work that I was doing, because I had gone on the road. So I was, in an aspect like that, as a boutique label, you do everything. So I was marketing, I was promo, I was A&R, you know, it was just everything up under the sun. So what really caught the attention when John and E40 were really good friends. E40 came out of his deal at Jive Records, and John offered him a deal, and 40 took it. It was the South was popping at the time. And man, I remember my first conversation with 40 was, you're one of the dopest lyricists ever. I wasn't a huge fan at the time because I just wasn't as familiar. Man, if you E40 is one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. If you ever get a chance to really sit down and talk to him and just get to know him as a person, man, he'll give you all the game. He's real. And if you notice, his wife is always with him. So in that aspect, his relationship taught me how to have a relationship within the music industry. His wife, his kids, and his family. He's a real family man, but he a real street dude too. So not to, I don't know if I can curse, but not to mess with him in that sense. But you watch him and see he's a good person. He has great heart. But man, it was, if you obviously you want to play into the culture of the Bay, you want that to work for you. But if you could slow down the delivery on a record or two, I'm sure John can give you what you need musically, and the rest is history. And that was you and that. So it was T-Pain's first feature ever, if I'm not mistaken, was the E40's You and That. It was T-Pain and Candy. And I'll never forget, there were some executives within Warner that were on out, and some high-ranking executives too, I ain't gonna speak their name, that wanted us to take T-Pain off that record. They
Dang.
were adamant because he wasn't necessarily, 40 was real cool. T-Pain hadn't gotten to that cool factor yet. Obviously, he was a great writer. He was, about to take off as an artist, but John fought that and made them, between John and 40, made them leave him on that record, and the rest is history as far as his career. Um,
Man, that's crazy that you brought that up because T-Pain, the same similar story. They said that happened the same way with Plies. The same
gotcha.
Plies came out when they had that Shawty single. They said they didn't want Plies on the Shawty song, and they said he had the hardest. I think Plies said it. I mean T-Pain said it was three different artists that did that song.
Oh,
But they
yeah.
said, but Plies didn't nobody know who Plies was, but he had the hardest out of everybody, and they was trying to take him off the song. That's crazy how stuff works out. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, that was a good time in the music industry for me. I was able to do a lot, and yeah, and kind of make a name for myself in that respect. So, I still kept my relationship with Organized. Was doing what I was doing for BME for a couple of years, and then, man, it came time. Naeem Ali was like, "Hey, man, we need to have a conversation." And I was like, "What you mean?" Well, even in that, because again, I wasn't making a lot of money because, it was just overhead from the label. But from that came the affiliates. So DJ Drama was going on the road with Lil Scrappy. Um, and it was when T.I. had gone through a little legal trouble, if I'm not mistaken. So Drama was, he was available. Because normally he was out with Tip early on back then. And we were able to get Drum to kind of go out, and he kind of heard me negotiating some business dealings, and he was part of a crew called the Super Friends, the DJ crew. Um, and kind of heard me kind of having my conversations, and eventually came back to me like, "Hey man, would you be interested in managing us? We're gonna, Cannon, myself, and Sense, we leaving the Super Friends." So I'm like, "Really? Okay." Um, so we sat down, had the conversation, and the rest is history. We did some miraculous things. And the first order of business was, again, we didn't have any real money. We were all doing okay. But Drum them is what we call ROI, return on investment. He was manufacturing the CDs for a particular rate, but he was selling them for almost what it cost him to make them. So the first order was just a business decision and business conversation of, we have to raise the rate. And I remember one of the mixtape sites back then were like, "Nah, we're not going to pay that." And I was like, "Either you're going to pay it or we're not going to deliver them to you anymore." And they were like, "Well, we'll just bootleg your shit." And I was like, "That's the case, then you do it." We created our own website. It was gangstergrills.com. And Big Oomp played a big piece in that too, because I remember Oomp calling me like, "Yo, man, we're selling our mixtapes for X amount of dollars. Y'all doing it for a fraction of it. Y'all fucking the game up." Again, I don't know if it occurred. Y'all screwing the game up. So I was like, "All right, cool." And I respect Oomp. So went back to Drum. We had that conversation. That's what made us raise the prices. And man, Operation Desert Storm happened. And a lot of the soldiers, the way for them to get the music and, what was going on, they were able to order the mixtapes, and the sound of what was happening, and, just the lingo and the talk, hearing Cannon and Drum talk on those tapes and hearing the drops from the artist was more important, I think, to almost having an official album at that time. Because, you got different aspects of it. It was the conversation of it that was happening on the mixtapes. That's what kind of sold it, the drops and reversing it. And you felt like you were in a club sometimes, as opposed to, just listening to the song all the way through. So I think that was the big selling point of it. And, that's what made us, we got we made a nice sum of money from that. And the aspect of, you had the Jeezy mixtape, you had the Lil Wayne tape, and the Yo Gotti tape. Those three tapes were kind of synonymous with moving the needle as far as Drum's career, and all of us for that matter. It helped the artist kind of move, and helped us move. And then I moved on from there to Warner. After that call with Naeem, had me meet with Tom Wiley. That was one of the toughest decisions I've ever made in my life, because John and I had gotten really close, real tight. I spent a lot of time in the studio with him, and having to tell him like, "Hey man, I'm gonna move on for this gig here." I'll be honest, it took me 6 months.
Dang.
Took me 6 months to leave, and the amount of money Warner was paying me was almost, I'm not gonna say 100 times, but synonymously more money than I was making before. But loyalty went a long way for me, and it strained our relationship a little bit early on, and then we got back cool later on.
Absolutely. So, take me through, cause you was in the hip hop lane. Tell me, cause and a lot of people know, we hear all the great stories and horror stories when it comes to hip hop on both sides, as an artist and as an executive. But, you don't have too many people that get into that gospel lane. So tell me, how it was when you start doing business in the gospel lane and having success with artists in the gospel lane as far as having records chart and also having an artist get into the Hall of Fame.
Oh man, it was interesting. Always had my faith and whatnot. One guy who is really a good friend of mine, D1. I actually managed D for a little while. Didn't necessarily know what I was doing because that type of music, genre of music, has a particular audience, which is why I kind of walked away from it because I didn't want to screw what he had going on up. But once I came into ONErpm, Zaytoven and I were kind of talking, and he had this project with Dietrich had in a song, and he wanted me to kind of put it out and you know introduced us to Dietrich and made me kind of go study a little more into gospel music, the marketing of it, promo. And one thing with Dietrich, he's not a traditional gospel artist. He kind of can go into a traditional R&B lane, and some of those records could cross over into the pop genre as well. But we wanted to solidify, what he does as gospel music and his gospel fan base as well. So man, it was kind of studying a lot. Nick Love played a big part in what we've done over here with Dietrich, kind of moving the needle, having a lot of deep dives into what we can do radio wise to move the needle as well. So it takes a little longer to kind of move a record in the gospel music. Those records stay on the chart for a very long period of time. You have very legendary artists kind of releasing those records. So, you want to be careful of your positioning of when to do so. And that audience isn't traditionally streamers. So you kind of got to figure out what platforms are the discovery touch points for a lot of the fan base. Well, same thing with hip hop, but in the gospel world, it's very particular at Pandora. It's very particular with YouTube, how the video has to be released. So kind of working with Dietrich has taught us a whole lot, and it's helped him in the aspect of, coming out of a major record label, actually owning his masters. Kind of the business of it, the accounting of it, knowing what a stream actually means, has gone a long way for him as well. Same thing with us, just figuring out, and the international aspect of it. We were able to kind of take it and move him, in other territories in Latin America, introduce him into the marketplace within Africa, which made him go out and collaborate with a lot of those African artists to realize that, that Christian faith and music is a worldwide trend. And, there's fans all over the world that want to be able to listen and discover those music and discover those artists. So I know now he's probably looking at the aspect of being able to tour in other territories as well.
Okay. So it's yeah, I always I was listening to Kurt Franklin, he got his new thing going with his pod and stuff. And he was explaining, the some of the stuff that he went through on the gospel side, and I was like, man, you never really hear any horror stories and then like that on the gospel side because everybody be so involved with the hip hop and R&B. You rarely hear about the business side when it comes to gospel artists because you rarely have people. It's not too many gospel artists that get to that level, so we really don't hear too many stories about it, like on the business side.
And I'd say, obviously the audience isn't as big, when you're looking at it from the back in the past eras of it because of the physical side of it. Now with streaming, it's discoverable all over the world without having to have that distribution platform, on the physical side of music that you used to have to have. So you could cross the oceans and not have to have, CD get on a ship and whatnot.
Yeah, and I mean cut you off. That this recording does it in 45-minute increments. So when it cut off, just hit the link again to get back on because we have to restart recording again.
Okay, no problem.
But yeah, they you can keep going.
Yeah, so being able to kind of just the technology side of things nowadays made it where gospel artists are making I would say more money now than they were in the past because you know most artists make the money off touring. I'll be honest with you. So with them being discoverable all over the world now, it's easier for them to maneuver through throughout those other territories.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm waiting. It's about to cut off in a couple seconds. All right. But
Mhm.
so kind of get into what you currently have going on as far as like music side, who you associated with right now, or you still like doing business with the same people?
Well, some of the same people still represent organized noise. That's family for life. Whatever they need. Obviously, Rico passed away recently, so kind of getting his estate set up, and I mean getting his state business set up with his boys and whatnot, his family. Um, Same thing with Justice League. I still represent them. I do a lot of work with 30 Rock, more so as a mentor. Him and Sloan, Eric Sloan, his manager and I are real close. So, kind of helping them maneuver through the processes of the music industry. Those are good young guys, and run the urban division of ONErpm. So, we are probably one of the world's largest independent music companies. We started out doing a lot of distro deals early on. I think I've been here about 7 years now. I came here from Rock Nation. So, after Warner Brothers, I managed Future for 8 years, Nappy Roots. Um, that's when I, grabbed on the D1. And then after Future, I ended up at Rock Nation for 3 years, as, the senior VP, under Benny Pugh. Did a lot of work with Jaden Smith, Vic Mensa, Willow Smith, a couple other artists, did a lot of great work over there as well. Kind of got homesick. I was in New York then, back up north, and I really wanted to be in Atlanta and be around my family. So man, it was interesting. The interesting thing about the music industry is every job I've ever had is my name being spoken in rooms that I've never been in, and to individuals that know nothing about me. So I always tell people, be cognizant of how you do business, because you're able to kind of continue your career, through how you treat people and the work that you do as well. Obviously, in the music industry, there's disagreements. I've argued with the best of them. I have the utmost respect for L.A. Reid. I will protect him to the end. But I've argued with him before. Same thing, Benny Pugh. I have the utmost respect for Benny. These are two of the greatest executives of all time. But we've argued, fussed, and fought, and came to a common ground and accomplished great things. You got to think, Future's what, the biggest streaming artist in Sony Music. And a lot of that came from the initiatives that we put in. It's interesting. I always had a conversation with people about streaming, for that matter. But from DJ Drama, and I'm not the smartest guy, in the room. I learn, I take, a little bit from different people and conversations and information. It goes a long way. So with Future, one of the things that, we were able to do, and I've never told this story before. And Benny and I talk about it a lot. The mixtape world actually helped hip hop come to the foray of streaming. Um, there were in that it was a while ago where it was all being bootlegged, and people were like, "Oh man, hip hop is this, it's not making any money, it's not doing this, it's not doing that." But a lot of it was on the streaming services because of, companies like, I can't even think of
I remember live mixtapes.
live mixtapes.
Yeah,
Man, those guys they're supposed to be billionaires right now. They might be, but I talk to some of them every now and then.
and they had everything on there.
Exactly. We were the top streaming artists at live mixtapes 2 years running. So something told me, and I rock with the guys over there. Patch, love you to death, brother. Um, there was one last mixtape that Future was doing that. I'll be honest, I did not want him to do it. We had told the label we weren't doing any more mixtapes. We had went in and said it. And Future's like, nah, I got to get one more off. Um, so he did it. But one thing I actually asked the guys at Live Mixtapes to do was give me the data. So obviously people have to use their email address to log in to be able to get the music from you guys. Um, I need that information. Now again, I didn't know what to do with it, but I gave it to Benny in LA, and they were able to give it to their sales department, and it gave us an unfair advantage to every other artist in the streaming world. The shit sounds genius right now, but I'll be honest, I had no idea what we were doing at the time. I just knew data is valuable. If you go to anything you go do now, they collect your data and they sell it all over the world. It's $1 billion business. So being able to access that information from them, and utilize it, in the sales side of Sony gave them an unfair advantage to any other artist out. Man, because it was almost a laughing stock when we put one of the Future albums out. People laughed at us because Iggy Azalea beat us that week in sales. But this is before streaming counted as a sale. It was digital downloads and physical CDs. We did well on the physical side. Digital downloads, we did not do well. Streaming, and I'm looking at the streaming numbers, and I'm like, oh man, we're on to something here. Like the streaming numbers had exploded. So, and one of the things, kind of understanding it without understanding it, I was able to kind of not necessarily renegotiate Future's deal, but go get us more money to do some things with, because I'm like, hey, this may not count on the Billboard charts, but your guys are still making money from it. So I'm doing the calculations. We've recouped our deal, or close to recouping what you guys have paid us out in advance and spent on the marketing side. So, we need some more money. And LA was fair. Benny was fair. They sat me down in a room and they took care of us. Which I'm sure to this day, Future, he loves Benny in LA. Even with Sylvia retiring, those three executives were synonymous with, just who we wanted to be as executives later on in life. Like looking at Sylvia's career, looking at LA's career, and looking at Benny's career, those are things that we want to be later on in life. That's what I've, those are goals of mine, is to have careers like that, as we kind of move down the line. And from Future, again, we parted ways a couple of years ago. We just talked this past weekend. And then, went to Rock Nation with Benny. Did some great things over there. And, now I'm, kind of exiting out of that with actually probably, I'd say, one of the smartest guys in music. Another guy that I put up there with Benny in LA is Emmanuel Zuns, the owner of ONErpm. And I say that in a sense because, man, when I came into ONErpm, I'm not going to say I was lazy, but I was ingrained into the old way of doing the business of music. And Emmanuel was on to the future of it. And, a lot of times people don't necessarily want to, us old guys, we like to stick to what we know. This is how it's done. This is how we going to do it. And he was like, well, that's not going to fly here. But the key to it is we would have knockdown dragouts too. But he explained to me why he was making me do certain things. So you could understand, what you're doing, what the value of it is, why this costs this, why the ROI on that is this, return on investment is this, what the value of a stream is, what the value of a premium stream versus a non-premium stream. And these are things that I never really knew or cared to know, but now it gave me value beyond what any exec now at any major record label, has, because they don't necessarily let you in. When you're on the creative side at a major record label, it's just give us the music. Go get the music and turn it in, and we'll do the rest. Here at ONErpm, it's you have to know every aspect of it to run, the space that you're in. So he holds me accountable. He holds all the executives at the company accountable, which I hold the staff here accountable as well. And man, because a lot of the guys in the Atlanta urban space, in our office, we're older. I hired older people for, just for the responsibility aspect of it. We have a couple of younger people here as well, but we all had to kind of go retrain our brains to figure out the digital space of the music industry currently. So, man, it's been wonderful for us over the last couple of years. We've done a lot of great things with a lot of great artists. And one thing that I like being here is we've done a lot of what we call distro deals, where artists were able to retain ownerships of their masters. I remember one part of my crew, I had Organized Noise and Goody Mob do an album together. neither one had ever owned the masters of their recordings.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a huge point in them doing it. And man, the project did really well. Right now, they're getting royalty checks from it every month. So everybody's sitting there like, damn, this is how it's supposed to look. You know, we did the marketing of it. They turned into music, and it was a great partnership. Same thing with Paul Wall. Man, we've done tremendous things with Paul Wall, and it opened us up in Texas to a lot of other artists. From Paul Wall, we did Sauce Walker and a couple of other deals down there, and then expanded throughout Texas. So we were very intentional when we did business. When I came in, I did go grab a lot because a lot of people are like, man, you grabbed a lot of the older artists, but it was, I wanted a fan base and I wanted to show a lot of those artists how the business can be done so they can go have conversations with the younger artists on this company is they're solid. They're not going to take your money, they're not going to take advantage of you, they're going to do good business. Um, and they're going to truly market your project. So the partnerships that we've been able to create have been tremendous. Big Baby Gucci, he was just here recently. He's, looking to do a new deal with us now. So even a lot of the younger artists that we've signed and, moved through, a lot of them want to stay. There have been major record labels that have tried to, take a lot of the acts that have kind of come in on the urban side here, but a lot of them choose to stay. And a lot of them pass up what we call, the difference is, I would say, superstardom compared to financial stability. Because if you're getting, a couple of $100,000 a month compared to a lump sum check, and then you got to recoup, out of your 15% share, that, couple of $1 million that you may have gotten, is it really conducive to your career? And one of the things we've done here that I'm very proud of is Southern Soul. So we started signing Southern Soul. I don't know where are you based out of? What city are you?
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky. So you may be familiar with Southern Soul. It's basically blues, just updated a little bit. There's I guess the biggest in it is King George. There's an artist named King George is huge in the Southern Soul circuit. I haven't been able to grab him yet, but I met with him a couple of times. George, we coming to get you. JR and Vince Phillips is their attorney. Vince is a very close friend of mine, as I started a lot of my career with Vince. But there's an artist named TK Soul we were able to sign. FPJ, Cecily Wilborn, Sir Charles. Man, these are artists nobody cared about. I mean, nobody was listening to it. Nobody was watching it. And, what we did, slowly having conversations with the DSPs, with Apple, Spotify, Pandora, because these artists were on their platforms. There was no playlist for them. They weren't being playlisted. It was just existing and the fan base was finding it. So we were able to kind of go to Pandora, shout out to J1, and he actually took a liking to it and saw, the amount of money it was making. So he started, creating playlists specifically for it and then kind of putting it on other playlists. The fan base and the age demo for it is big on the Pandora platform. Same thing at YouTube. Once they started taking note of it, they do a lot of visuals for it. And those fans discover a lot of their music on the YouTube platform. So we were able to kind of go in and help grow the genre of music. So a lot of the artists just continued to come to us. And then the one record that kind of took off and everybody is, jumping up and down for that 803 Fresh Boots on the Ground. It's not our record, but that's a direct correlation with what we were able to do in Southern Soul to make all the majors pay attention to it and, created a big bidding war once that record came and took off. So we've been able to take advantage of it because we have maybe 10, 12 of the top 25 Southern Soul acts signed here already. So we're continuing to move the needle and just in that culture of music, because there's a certain culture, the trail rides and there's different type of events that they have in, the rural towns all over the U.S. There probably trail rides that happen all summer long in Kentucky. A lot of people don't even know what they are. I'll be honest. Until I met TK, I didn't even know what they were. So I had to, I knew, how you see and hear about it. I just thought it was bunch of people from the country having a cookout or a picnic. but they're called trail rides, and they do specific things at those trail rides. So, man, and that's what I've always been. I like to get ingrained in the culture of whatever type of music it is. Hip hop. Unfortunately, I think we've kind of gone a little too far left in hip hop with the violence and whatnot. The reality of hip hop. And it may be my age, but I think when maybe even you in the '90s, there was backpack hip hop that you heard on the radio. There was street records too. But you got everything for everybody. Now it's everything's murder and kill. So I rock with the young guys, but I'm like, damn, can we give some of the other artists? Can we give the J. Cole a couple of more? Not just one J. Cole or just one Kendrick. Can we give a couple of those guys a chance at urban radio or on the playlist? The responsibility of society as a whole, I think, needs that, just in case there are kids out there that identify with that and want that, as opposed to, I would say a lot of kids out there, daydreaming about being drug dealers, listening to music. It is what it is, but that's a reality for some people. So you don't want that to drive people to do that. So I think it's a responsibility of us as executives to kind of make sure that there's a balance of it. I'm not saying do away with it because it's real. It's realistic. It's what's happening. But these other things are happening too. There are kids at private schools that, want to become senators. I love the Cosby Show. The Cosby Show gave me a reason to want to attain a certain status in life and wealth and have a family and whatnot. I grew up watching the drug dealers. I was never a drug dealer, but I watched it. I didn't necessarily want to be that. I wanted to be what Bill Cosby was. I wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, or, have a profession and, work that way. So I think there's a balance of the music that actually has to, enhance culture a little bit for us. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent to the left there.
But tell the people what you got, what you guys got coming for the rest of the year, top of 2026, and how they can keep up with you guys, social media, websites, things like that.
So we got FPJ kind of coming down the line. His first album. He's put out a lot of singles. That FPJ is going to be a huge artist in the Southern Soul Circle, but I think it's going to transition into mainstream music as well. And we have the Lobby Boys with Jim Jones and Mano out of New York coming down the line, fourth quarter as well. They do very well for us. Let's see, there's a new Paul Wall album coming out. There is I guess I can speak to it. Big Crit is going to put out a new project with us. Just recently coming up. So I'd say just, look out for those particular artists. There's several others as we're, getting a lot of deals done. There is one, Tierra Thomas, that we're doing very well with. Shout out to the crew, Eddie Blackman, who signed that, for us. And Chike. And then, a lot of international artists. Bella Shmurda out of Africa. He's coming over to the state. Actually, he's in the States now. So we're doing a lot of work to kind of move the groundwork for him. So with our company, there's 40 plus offices in different territories all over the world. So we're able to operate differently from, other companies. So on the international aspect of it, we take artists from the U.S. and move them there and in other territories and bring other artists from overseas into the U.S. and we're able to kind of move them throughout the marketplace. So outside of those acts, just so much more, man. And you can find us at ONErpm.com. There's a lot of information there for us on how to do business with us. A lot of A&Rs are out here kind of pushing the needle and reaching out to artists to, kind of come into the fold. And I'm still doing my thing with Organized Noise, Justice League. Those are brothers, as fam. Those things happen, and there's a development. There's a couple of projects we're doing with Organized Noise. Obviously, you see us with One Music Fest. The whole crew is coming together. You got, for Rico, just Goody Mob, Organized Noise, Outkast, just everybody kind of coming together on the stage one last time to kind of pay tribute to our long lost brother, Rico Wade, who kind of founded and created all of us. So, loves to him. And, OneRPM.com, man. Y'all watch out for us because we coming to take the entire music industry by storm.
Absolutely, man. I've been getting a lot of execs here lately on as guests, so like I like to hear the other side. I do artists all the time, so it's always good to hear the other side, just to have that balance, to hear the stories and the history of and the grind of how people come up to get to the position that they in now. Love to especially minorities. I love to see people come up. So I don't just do regular episodes. I also do episodes. Talking about real life topics. On did episodes that went viral with police brutality or talking about real life stuff, as far as like fake friends. Child support, things like that. Anything I think a person would go through in real life,
Gotcha.
but
I
yeah,
appreciate that, man. We need more of that.
yeah. I was in the military for 8 years. I had started this when I got out the military. I got medically retired 5 years ago, and
Okay.
I'm real big on mental health. So I started it because it's just to touch on mental health hot topics, and then started getting the artist interviews in 2022, and it's started to take off for me a little bit. My first big interview was with Derez Deshawn.
Okay.
Then I had got Lil Flip, Pimpin' Ken, Real Rick Ross, and a couple more big people like Cash Doll, T-Rail, and people like that. But
Okay.
I know
We have to make sure we get some of our artists on there with you then eventually.
oh yeah. I got a nice catalog of people on did. I interviewed one of Future's artists, Free Band Test. He's one of
Oh,
Future's
nice.
right hand man.
Tess is here, ONErpm.
Yeah,
She was
yeah,
with us.
Me and Tess got a good relationship. I did with him and E Blue. They had he had I interviewed him, E Blue, and Derez and Sean the same week.
Okay, that's dope. That's dope. All right.
And
That's good. All right. I like that support.
but uh But yeah, everybody tap in with Orlando McGhee. Go tap into their website, everything they got going on. Be on the lookout for all the projects that they got coming out with their artists. And pretty sure they're going to continue to keep that great track record, keep putting good music out, keep doing good business, and keep changing people's lives. They come into the music industry.
All right. Thank you, brother, for having me.
If you want to be great, you want to be the baddest motherfucker ever at what you do, you're going to be misunderstood by everybody because you're going to be so fucking obsessed and so driven to get there. That's what it takes.
That's a trip.
It takes every second of your fucking life. Anybody says balance? Yeah, balance is important for a lot of fucking people. It is. But if you want to fucking go to that edge where people do not like you, don't understand you, question everything you fucking do, you've arrived. When you are misunderstood to the point where fucking people think you're psycho and you're nuts and you're this and that, why are you in the fucking gym at 1 o'clock in the fucking morning? You just got to doing an op for fucking 13, 14 hours at the Ranger School, man, at the gym. What is wrong? You will never understand what is wrong with me. And that's why I'm so fucking glad you don't. Because I'm in the right fucking spot. When people don't understand you anymore, you're in that spot of obsession and drive. Where people are like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? I don't want to talk to you, man, because you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it.
Boom.
I don't want you to get it.